Hello my friends, this is Miss Jennifer from the Elkhorn Public Library, and I'm going to talk to you today about fiction and nonfiction in the Dewey Decimal System. We're going to be doing a winter reading program this year, and it's going to be all about nonfiction. So what is nonfiction? So when we say fiction, we mean stories, and when we say nonfiction, we mean not stories or real. So we can look at something like Wedgie and Gizmo versus the Tooth, and we know that this is fiction. This is not real, because there is an evil genius guinea pig, and guinea pigs are delightful, but they are not evil geniuses. And a very silly dog, this is Wedgie, who can talk, and dogs cannot talk. So we know this is a fiction one. Super easy. What about something like this one, American Dog Chestnut? This is a story about a stray dog called Chestnut and a girl who is trying to save the dog and her family's Christmas tree farm. Now, it's not a fantasy story. There really are stray dogs and there really are Christmas tree farms, and everything in this could have happened, but did it happen? Not exactly this way. So this is a fictional story that somebody made up. So those are two kinds of fiction. Now, nonfiction, we come over here to our numbers, to our Dewey Decimal System, and we know this is all nonfiction. It's all true, right? Wrong. So the numbers are just an easy way to organize information. Over 100 years ago, a guy named Dewey, who, let's be frank, was not a great guy, but he had some okay ideas. So he decided to organize all information into classes. You're in a class probably, you're a second grader or a fifth grader, you've been classified. Well, he decided to classify everything and he organized it by numbers. So there is actually a class for fiction. But we don't usually use it too much because it's easier to organize fiction by author, but there are lots of things that have a number that are not nonfiction. There are things like The Little Mermaid. Is this nonfiction? Well, no, they're fairy tales, but it's got a number. That's because Dewey made a class for fairy tales. It's in the 300s. Then there's stuff that's a little trickier. Or no, after fairy tales. Here we go. Or poetry. Now, poetry can be nonfiction. This is poetry about the United States, so some of it's about real places or real people, but it's mostly fiction, made up. But poetry is in the 800s because we find it easier to pull poetry out, so if people are looking just for poetry, they can find it. But of course, most of what we have over here is nonfiction. Like we look at this one and we see sharks, we know that's nonfiction. These are real sharks. Or there'll be some that are a little trickier, like this one, monstrous. Now this is all about classic monsters like vampires and werewolves and Godzilla. Is this real? Well, you wouldn't think so at first, even though it's got a Dewey number on it. But if you look at it, it's actually nonfiction because it's all about the science behind the monsters. How they made the movie monsters, why people used to think monsters were real, even stuff like the diseases that some people had that made them come up with vampires or werewolves or zombies. There are real animal zombies in here. So when we're looking for fiction and nonfiction, first we're going to think, is it true or not true? And mostly we're going to look over here under the Dewey numbers, but we're going to remember that this is a classification system. The numbers don't mean nonfiction. So we're going to look along the shelves. We're going to look for these handy little markers that are sticking out, and they'll have the number on top, and then they'll tell you what's in that class. So this is J591, and in this class are animal abilities, tracks, and poop. So here we would find nonfiction about animal abilities, about animal tracks, and nonfiction about poop. It's a thing. So that's how the Dewey Decimal System works, and you can actually find things organized by the Dewey Decimal System in several different places in the library. Most of them are here in our nonfiction section, which you now know includes some fiction, but there are also some over in the picture books and in the easy readers, and it's usually a good way to say, oh, this might be nonfiction. Let me look at this and find out. So I hope you are ready to journey into nonfiction in just a few weeks for our winter reading program.